Hi, I am TD McRoy. This is Paranormal Diagnostic. Let's get started. Okay, what we have here is this gentleman that's closest to us. His name is CJ, and I believe the gentleman in the black is Sonny. And they are, I'm not sure where they're located because most of the time they don't give addresses or states or locations to where they are because they don't want people coming around there. But this particular video is an actual real paranormal investigation. And I'm not even sure if these guys are actually ghost hunters. I don't really think that they are. I think they go to a lot of different places and activities. I've only seen a few of his videos, CJ's here. And this one I enjoy. What's even better about it is one thing that I've been looking to do on this channel that we haven't done yet is a paranormal investigation. And to see if we can come up with information that could actually help anyone for TV and the movies, we actually are able to use actual raw video footage to run through the Iroquois technology, and so we have never really pulled any information offline in an actual case to see if there's activity going on. And when I first pulled up this video, when this guy was talking, he said a couple things in the beginning that made me question that if this was going to be a real haunted house, and if there was going to be any activity that we could even capture. He was talking to the family, and he said that they actually have been trying to get him to come investigate this location, and finally he got there, and he said that he was going to set up an interview, and they declined to do that or to be interviewed publicly, and that kind of makes sense. But somewhere along the way, something he said in there made me think that this is going to be BS, and but it's not, because we don't show BS on this channel. And so if I'm taking your time to even talk about this, you can better believe that we have evidence to show you tonight. That is the great part. And we're hoping, and listen, we don't know the family, we haven't contacted the family. We're going to treat this just like any other evaluation that we do with the Iroquois technology and use of the dynamic filtration. This is fairly new. I think he posted this back in January 28th, 2020. So this is only a few weeks old from when he posted. I don't know when he actually did the video, and but it's very interesting though, and we found some pretty neat things. So let's go ahead and get started. And so they go from this room to end up introducing each other, and the very next room they go to is the kitchen. Well, I'll tell you right now, right over here, the Iroquois technology got a hit right on the right side of that refrigerator. The reason that we can't show you anything, because a black refrigerator in this case is very similar to shooting in total darkness. The Iroquois technology can see the entity that's over there. Our eyes cannot see that, number one. Number two, the dynamic filtration cannot pull anything out of pure darkness. So basically, if you colored this whole photograph black, exactly the same color as that refrigerator, it would act as the camera looking into a totally dark room. So regardless of what we do, we're never going to be able to pull that out. The dynamic filtration can't hit on it because it's just pure darkness. But the Iroquois technology can. That's how we know something's over there. So anyway, so he moves from there, he turns the corner, and he goes to the bottom of these stairs, and that's a lot of steps. And I believe this might be a townhome, just like a townhouse, but it might be a townhome that's very large. And immediately, the Iroquois technology gets a hit right here. And if you look at this photograph right here, you will see someone faintly poke their head out. We know that it's a person, or I'm sorry, entity, because the Iroquois technology hit on it. And so there you go. And then it goes away. Just that quick. It pokes its head out and then it's back. And it's very transparent. But we get a hit on that. So he goes from there. I think he looks around and he goes up and he goes into this room. And this is where it kind of all starts at right here. As soon as they walk in, they most likely feel the temperature change. Generally, you feel a temperature change, and then at a later point, you say, hey, it must be 10 to 15 degrees cooler in this room. Normally you don't say that at the same time you're feeling it. So I'm sure as soon as they open this door, they probably start feeling the temperature change. And what's interesting about it, he goes in and the Iroquois Technology gets a hit, not right here, but he takes another step in and he gets a hit right here, right over top of that pillow. It gets a hit. That's strange because we don't see anything above that, and we don't really see anything on this part of that love seat. And so he walks in and he zooms in, and he starts to make a comment about this goat. He doesn't know if it's a goat. He doesn't know if it's a mouse, but he calls it a devil goat as soon as he walks in. So I don't know how well he knows these people who lives there. He doesn't mention anything about them. But to me personally, just me personally, I believe that that is an odd looking pillow decoration to have. I don't see anything else in a room that matches that goat. That's basically man-animal duality that we always question. Now, I'm not saying that these people have anything to do with the occult or if they practice black magic. I have no idea. Uh, but what I want to say about that symbol, and not just that symbol, but symbols in general. If you watch this channel from the beginning and you watched everything that I've talked about, you notice that I will talk about things like sarcasm and how entities don't understand sarcasm, right? They don't really basically get jokes. Yeah, have we heard entities chuckle at something? Sure we have. But what I'm saying is they're not as clear as we seem to be on understanding. Like last week's show, I talked about actors and actors that have been cursed, and I explained why they were being cursed was based on the lines that they actually are hired to give in a movie that's basically demonic in nature. And because of that, the entities that might be in that area don't understand that they're only acting, they're not really possessed. And so that's what I mean by sarcasm. And so in this case, if you have a demonic looking symbol like that could be, some people look at it and go, what are you talking about? That's not demonic looking. Well, you have to go back to satanic art and satanic statues. And when you go back, you will see that the duality of man and goat, there's a lot of representations of that being, an image of Satan. Okay, let's just say that. So let's imagine, and remember, the reason we're at this house, meaning the reason that they are at this house, is because they are having spirit activity, paranormal activity. Something is going on there that they seem not to understand. So they call this guy in because they have an enormous amount of activity. So what I say is when I see a room like this, and they say it's 15 degrees cooler than any other room they've been in thus far, and the Iroquois Technology gets a hit. Well, I'll show you what it got a hit on in a second, but let's get back to this goat. So you have this duality between man and animal in this house in the form of art, and it could be looked at as a pagan symbol or a symbol of Satan or a symbol of the devil for those who didn't know better, right? If most of us walked into any room and we said that is the sign of the devil, we would believe it, right? There wouldn't be any reason to believe that it wasn't. unless we maybe knew the person or the family that lived there. But if someone says, "Oh yeah, these people worship the devil," I don't think there's any of us that didn't have any prior knowledge of that pillow wouldn't say, "Okay, yeah, absolutely, that seems like a possible symbol of the devil." And when you go back and start looking at some of the symbols, you will see what I'm talking about. Here's another one, and another one. One in red, black and white. So you can see that the images of a goat has been recognized um, by people as an image of the devil. So let's just assume that wherever these people got these pillows, maybe they made it, I don't know. Let's just assume that at some point they purchased those pillows, right? And they bring these pillows to this house. I think they've only been in this house a few years. And let's say that there was a man, an older man, that's like say in his 50s, right? Let's say he looked like an evangelist, like one of the Southern evangelists. No one in particular, but just that Southern evangelist look, right? But let's say that person actually secretly, when he was alive, worshiped the devil. And he had a big mane of hair, and he just had the look, right? And someone brings these pillows in there. Now, if this house is full of entities, even though there's never been a report of any activity in the beginning, let's say, but now you have this symbol that, let's say, this evangelist that worshiped the devil decides that he wants to be the leader in that room of anybody who wants to follow him. So, as an entity, he says that he commanded for the people of that house to bring him a symbol so he can worship the devil in that house, in that room, on that couch. Now, you got to remember, as far as this channel is concerned, everything that basically happens or has anything to do with inside a structure is negative, right? And anything, simple put, anything outside that happens in nature with entities or positive in nature. So you already have a negative evangelist type person in that room. You bring in a symbol that now he can use to convince all the other negative entities in there that this is what we're going to do. We're miserable. We can't be in nature. We just well try to make everybody else around us miserable. And so what happens is you get more hate that starts to be revealed than you had before. So they start following him and they start worshiping this. So what happens, you get a large congregation of spirit activity in this room, in this house. And we find out later that this was the room where a young girl, don't know any backstory to it, hung herself. Now, was the young girl the one that brought these pillows in? Was it part of that same family or was it part of another family? All of that I do not know. And I honestly wish I did know, because when we would go help a family like this, having that information would be vital, especially after we find everything that we find in the room. So now we have this demonic, Satanist looking pillow there. And wrapped around the top part of that pillow on that love seat is where the Iroquois Technology got a hit. And what we are looking at is this right here. That you can see his eyes right here and right here. When they look like that, most of the time they're bright, limpid blue eyes. I mean, those are really, really bright blue eyes. You know, like the blue eyes people have that's almost hard to look at because they almost look like they're such a light, like almost ice, white colored blue. That's what that guy has. You can see his heavy mane of hair there, his nose, and you can see his body come down here. And what's interesting, let me show you a picture of how we color sketched him. And when we color sketched him, that's what he looks like. So you can clearly see his face and his eyes, his neck. You can see where his body goes down. But what's interesting is whoever this man is, and I call him the evangelist, he has only part of a leg on his left. This part right here is actually a stump. And another angle when they're actually filming, you can see the whole couch. So it's not like that's the butt end of the couch where the armrest comes down. It's not there. That's just in the middle of where leather is there. There shouldn't be anything that resembles that there. But what that is there is he's an amputee, basically. And so he stays there. Like every time the Iroquois Technology goes by when they're filming, no matter when they come back in that room, he stays there because I think he is the problem. He is using the power of that symbol to run that place, at least, and everything mostly from that room. And he is the crook. So he is your biggest problem, definitely with that room. And I think it's either attached to that pillow and probably that furniture. So, what recommendation would CPI give to them? Get rid of that pillow and get rid of those three love seats in that room. Honestly, I would get rid of everything in that room because, listen, these entities always like to be attached to something. We almost always find them on something. Every now and then, you'll get them walking across the middle of a room. Very, very rare. And in this case, this gentleman, like every other entity we see, will get up and move and get off, that couch or whatever when people walk close to him. But this guy doesn't do that. Every time, I mean, they're probably in and out of this room 4 or 5 times. And every time, and we're not going to show you all that because there's no reason. This is the best image that we have. But every time they're in that room, we get a hit. That guy never moves. And he would be the same as somebody when you go into a big mansion or a castle or something, and when you make it to the roof. The most important people, or who think they're the most important people or entities in these places, almost never move. Or don't move very far or kind of stay in the same place. And this guy does that. He stays there literally the entire time that they're investigating. So I would say that is your first problem. Who he is, who has any idea? But starting with the amputee leg, that's a good way to start. You know what I mean? There probably wasn't a lot of people who either lived in that house, and there's no guarantee that he even lived there. I mean, with the heavy mane of hair that he has on top there, a lot of people wore their hair like that in the 70s. If they didn't wear them long, they wore them short, but they had that thick mane if they still had their hair, that kind of comb over well before they lost their hair. So that's where I would start. He could be a little bit more modern than that. I mean, who knows? If you go back to a haunting on Brockway that I took part in, the image that I captured there, the lady of the house believed that she knew who he was as soon as she saw it. So once again, we would take this image to a client of ours and say, "Here's the image. You have to figure out who he may be," and it may be simple to figure out who he might be, especially that it appears to be an amputee. And we know he's not just wearing cut-off pants because the bottom of his pants kind of works its way around right there where it looks like a stump. Like someone had cut off a pair of pants and then put some type of elastic there so it would form around his leg and just wouldn't swing. And they used to do that. And maybe they still do that. I don't know. But that definitely matches there. So moving on from there, they walk to the bottom of these stairs, and because Sonny is hearing something upstairs, and to me, when I heard it, it sounded like maybe like a table, if you have a table that's off against, that's up against the wall, and it's off kilter a little bit, and if you go by and you tap it a little bit, it will kind of lean over and kind of tap the wall and kind of come back on its own. That's what it sounded like when I first heard it. And what's interesting, because when the camera turns and they point it up, they talk about these French doors, but then you see this little black table here, right? And interesting enough, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit like right in between these two banister railings here. And when we add the dynamic filtration to this area right here that we circled, this is what we got. And you can see right there, there is a face. Doesn't look like a face. There is a face of a man that's appearing around that banister, and he is seated right upon that table. And you can see it's got eyes and maybe a mustache, and maybe those are teeth there. And you kind of see his hair is kind of messy a little bit. And you see a dark energy above him. But you can see a line that's going directly across his nose there. And yeah, so that's a good hit. The Iroquois Technology hit right on them. And so they never end up going up there, and they turn around because they hear a noise coming from what I believe is a bathroom here. And this bathroom is like adjoining to another room. I don't know if it's a master bedroom or not. This place is kind of a maze. Once you watch the video, you'll see. So anyway, so they start walking towards that, and CJ actually turns the camera to the right as they're getting ready to go in and captures this bed right here. That's very interesting because the Iroquois Technology got a hit on it. And we're like, okay, well, we don't see anything. And but it definitely got a strong hit and went to the next frame and got another hit. And we're like, okay, clearly there's something on the bed. And I love the dynamic filtration. We have no control of how it builds upon the particles that it discovers. I wish we could. Maybe I'm glad that we can't. It pulls out whatever it sees because we can't see it. We can't see each individual particle. It's literally like taking a M&M and taking another M&M and stacking it on top of that M&M. And if you can't see it clear enough, stacking another M&M on top. So basically, the dynamic filtration basically discovers these particles, and they're individual, like sand or M&Ms, let's say, and it just starts to stack them. So it doesn't draw anything. It just stacks one on top of each other until it gets to the point that it's stacked where we can actually see it with our eyes. And sometimes it just won't stack because, well, honestly, we don't know why it doesn't sometimes. We believe it's the way they are displayed at the time. And I think a few shows back, I talked about that. I always thought it was something on our end that was the problem, but we're discovering, or we have discovered, that it's not on our end. Because sometimes the dynamic filtration works perfect, like it did in this case, and it doesn't in other cases. So we believe it's the entities and how they're displayed. But so anyway, we're just going to show you the image because this is what we saw. We basically didn't see anything, and just like we're showing you now, there's nothing on that bed. And when we came back, this is what the dynamic filtration had came up with, and this is the first image right there. And you can see that's kind of blurry. That's kind of like one of the earlier stages of it. And I gave that look, but right there you can see what looks like a woman kind of spread eagle with her arms, or hands behind her head, kind of relaxing there. And so then when we clean it up a bit, that's what we get. So, and remember, the Iroquois technology only pinpoints it, and the dynamic filtration actually layers the particles that we discover. However, it takes our own eyes that have nothing special about them to see what we think we're seeing. So when we look at it, and I send it out to all the other CPI members, they say woman spread eagle on the bed. That's what I say. I hope that's what you guys see. So they move on from there. And remember, they're still heading into the bathroom. This was just a quick pan to the right that CJ did, and now Sonny and them are still continuing on into the bathroom where they heard the noise. Maybe it didn't come from the bathroom. Maybe it came from that entity jumping on the bed. So anyway, so they're going in, and the Iroquois technology gets a hit right below Sonny, right here. So we zoom in, and what we see is what looks like a little girl peering around a corner. Amazing. So they continue on, and they're going into, I guess, another bedroom there. And you'll see in the video that Sonny, that's a fairly a large, he's larger than CJ. He's probably not that large of a man, but just standing next to CJ, you can see that he is somewhat larger than him. So there's a like a closet door or something that's open, and and uh, and Sonny is actually walking straight into a bedroom. So he doesn't touch the door. Sonny kind of just squeezes his way between the wall that's on the left of him and the door that's on the right that's swung all the way open. And for some reason, I don't know if CJ wasn't paying attention or whatever, he actually hits the or kicks the door with his right foot, and he goes through a lot of pain from that. Well, the Iroquois Technology got a hit right under Sonny's right arm, looking into that closet right before that incident happened. And what we discovered is this right here. And you can see by that there's something looking out. It's hard to see. We got a hit on it right before that door. I think that entity that's in that closet somehow was able to swing that door and hit him. And remember, um, entities have a hard time uh, touching people who move, meaning because we represent a sphere in space, right? And that sphere has what we call 24 panes of images that you look at all the time. And just think of it as a disco ball. And every little square pane would be an image of whatever that entity's looking at. So if the entity's looking at me, based on that round sphere, it would always be 24 panes of me facing that entity. So if that entity wanted to do harm to me, it would have to look at that disco ball and every individual pane of it that has an image of me in it and figure out which of those 24 are me. And he would have to guess. So if it's, let's say I'm in the very center of that is the actual me, meaning if you touch that center image of me, you will always touch me. If you touch any of the other 23 panes that are facing you at that time, you would not touch me. Your energy would go somewhere else in that building or in that room. So since it's a disco ball, that disco ball turns. As it turns, you always will see 24 panes. So what the entity is seeing is 24 of me, but long as I'm moving, I'm like that disco ball that's spinning. So that's why it's so difficult for them to touch us. However, they are good at realizing where those panes are on that disco ball when it's objects that never move, like a door that never moves, like a wall that never moves. So if you have a bed that's been in the same place for 35, 20 years, 15 years, 8 years, whatever it's been, they know how to affect different locations on that bed because that bed never moves. That's why entities get so upset. It's not when you remodel your house that pisses them off. It is the fact that they have taken time to learn how to affect something in that room. So if they always want to turn your light switch on, they know where that light switch is. But if you decide to move that light switch to the other side of the room, they're pissed off at it because it's literally like going into a blind man's house where he has lived for 42 years, right? By himself and changing everything around and then have that blind man come home. What's going to happen? He's not going to know where anything is. Why? Because it took him X amount of years to learn where everything was. And he can operate that room just as well as someone who has sight can. So what happens when entities get upset by renovation, we truly don't believe here CPI that it has anything to do with the renovation. They love the new room and all that. It's the fact that you're taking that ability that it took them who knows how long to learn where certain things were where they could interact with our realm. And now that you moved it, they can no longer interact. So that's what we see. So we believe that entity in that closet from that location is able to manipulate that door because he's already learned how to manipulate that door. So what happens is when CJ goes to walk by because Sonny, who's paying attention, squeezes his shoulder in and doesn't put himself in a position to get hit by that door. CJ does. He thinks that he kicked that door. I believe that it was probably mutual. That entity pops up, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit on it, and then you hear him say, ow. So I think that that's more than a coincidence. I think it was a little bit of CJ not paying attention, kicking the door at the same time that entity swung it. Moving on. So they're have discovered this elevator, right? CJ thinks it's great. Him and Sonny get in the elevator. They're crazy to get in the elevator that they haven't talked to the people who live there to even see if it's functioning correctly. Because that's the first thing I would add. I wouldn't even get in it because you could ruin your whole investigation. You're there to do investigation, and both people get in the elevator, they're not even sure how to work it or if it even works. I mean, if it's malfunctioning, because every time somebody gets in it and it gets stuck, that would be bad. But anyways, they get in it and they finally figure it out. But anyway, so they're going up and down in this elevator and they think it's neat. So they end up coming out of the elevator and they see this. And what we're looking at is what we looked at earlier when they were downstairs and they heard noise. And I talked about the table bumping up against the wall. And we see the man's face come around the pillars. This is them on the second floor now, and they're no longer on the first floor looking up. And as soon as they get out of the elevator, they feel coldness. Well, yeah, they should feel coldness because let's say that that entity that the Iroquois Technology hit on that we saw with the gray face, I'm figuring the gray face was that entity probably lingering on that little gray ball right there. But remember, that ball right there doesn't have a face to it. What we saw earlier does. And so that would make sense that they feel coldness coming from that area. So I love this one, honestly. So they walk in and they open the doors to the left and they walk in. And as soon as they walk in, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit right here. So we go and we apply the dynamic filtration. And we see her a little bit, right? So now we have to let it run for a while. And so we're not excited about it, but we're so excited about it because what she says. And so once we run it for a couple hours, I don't know how long, we basically were able to pull this image out. It was very difficult. It didn't have, I guess, a lot to hit on, even though we ran it for a long time. But we did end up coming up with this image, and you can see her there. You can see her face. You can see she's wearing some type of hat, and she looks like she's wearing some type of cape or something, in a dress. I mean, it looked like a cape is like over her shoulder, but I'm sure she's wearing a long dress. And you can see where it goes down right here to the ends. The best part about this video, he comes in right there, and he turns around because he hears something, and he turns back to Sonny and he says, "Did you hear that?" And the lady says, "Give me a break." And you hear her say that. And then he turns around and says, "Did you hear that?" So when women say that and used to say that, I mean, it's almost she said it in a way like, "You're an idiot." If you listen to her, and that's what she says, she's like, "Give me a break." Like, are you seriously walking around here doing what you're doing? I love it. I just think it's great. And clearly she's not downstairs in the room where we had all the demonic stuff. And listen, and just to let you guys know, we have discovered that in these houses, they definitely have a lot of segregation that goes on between cultures. Not necessarily between black and white or anything, but just cultural differences we think we see in here. So we almost look at a house like this that has a lot of activity and we find these different people as literally like just different continents, honestly. Um, Sometimes one may interfere with the other for whatever reason, but normally they don't. And so this is what we see. And so this woman that I love it, and when you go and watch the video, please, that's why the link's down below. Go there, look at it, and definitely when you get to this point, definitely run it back a few times. What I did is actually I just took my cell phone and I put it up to the speaker, and I just played it, and then I just kind of went back and ran it back, and eventually you'll hear the first part. Give me a part you hear fine, but the break part. But once I got it, I'm like, that's what she's saying. Give me a break, and she's talking to CJ like, give me a break, guy. Interesting, fascinating, actually. So anyway, so they go from there to go into this next room, and once again, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit right here. And you can see there's actually the head standing over there. And here's just another look of it as well. Um, Clearly over there. And this is what's interesting is when Sonny turns and seems to walk over there, he hears something and he looks right in that corner exactly where that entity is standing. And then he looks at the corner, doesn't see anything, and you can see doubt immediately come over him, and he turns and looks around, and now he's looking for some other location where he thinks the sound came from. But like I said in our last show, we do not trust our senses. Our senses are excellent. If our sense tells us to look in a direction when we hear something, that's where we need to look. We may turn and see something else, you know what I mean? But when it's dealing with the supernatural, I'm telling you, these people are right almost every time. Their very first instinct, where they look, trust your instinct. He looks over there and then he denies it. Oh, I don't see anything, so it must be somewhere else. No, keep looking over there. That involuntary, that's where you looked. You heard something and it took you right to that spot. You need to stay watching that spot. Okay, so that's just, a new rule of thumb that CPI is putting out. Your very first response, looking in a direction, turning into a direction, whatever it may be, stick with that. Because as soon as you look someplace else, you're almost you're going to miss when that entity goes and moves. And if you keep watching over there, you may see something, but no one does that. No one continues to watch. Hey, listen, if I was in there, I wouldn't continue to watch either. But I'm saying for those people who are interested in going out and doing that type of investigation, when you hear something, stay there. Do not move. Keep your glance over there and look in the whatever area you looked at, because it's more, I really believe it's more than your senses. It's telling you to look over there when you hear something. I think there's something that's internal about how we share energy among other people. I mean, we share it next to people. Sometimes, when you're dating or you're married or something, you can sleep next to someone and get an amazing night's sleep. And then other times you can sleep next to somebody, you toss and turn all night. And I always believed that it was the exchange of energy between two people. And if you have a nice even flow between, whoever the person is that's sleeping next to you, it gives you a better night's sleep. And some people, when people are not next to them, they don't sleep as well because they're only relying on their energy. And their energy is just kind of running in a cycle, you know what I mean? Kind of flowing back through them. And it's not enough. They really need that outside energy to flow with them. And sometimes you can tell you can have one person on one side for some reason, some person on the other side. When you turn towards that one person, that you'll get a better night's sleep than if if you're out camping or something and you turn to sleep towards the other person. However that energy flows is true. And because of that, I believe when we're in these type of environments, I think we still have a connection to these entities that were part of our physical world. Moving on. So when they turn, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit right in this closet. And listen, I'm not touching this just because I like the way it looks. I don't want to put the dynamic filtration on it. I like the way it looks naturally. Here's a little boy with his little LBR, little boy's regular haircut, that's peering out. You can see his leg, you can see his little hand here, you see his left leg is up. And here's another look at it right here. And they're moving, and he's not moving. He's staying frozen because he's at a point right now where he knows that they can see him. But he has decided to blend in perfectly because that's what they do. They're masters at camouflage perfectly with that scarf that's hanging in there with the polka dots. So that is a hit because the Iroquois Technology got it. When we look at it, we see the little boy, we circle it. You can tell it's a little boy. It's amazing. Like I said, we didn't apply um, the dynamic filtration on that because we like the way he looks in his natural state. Yeah, it'll take a little bit more eye power from you to be able to capture him. And of course, we can zoom into that. That may help a little bit. We'll do that. So, yep. So there you go. That is a little boy. That is amazing. I love that one. Okay, let's go. Moving on. So they go from there and they go right into a another bathroom, and this is definitely going to be difficult to see. And because of the darkness behind it over there, that curtain, we weren't able to pull it out. But if you look at that Texas steer um, skeleton head there, you will see if you divide it in half and look at the right side where his left eye would, where the skeleton's left eye would be, but let's call it the right side. You'll see a little red pattern coming down from like the top of his forehead down. That's actually the face of a man that's standing there. The dynamic filtration could not pull it out. It kind of just darkened that area, but it hit on it, and we applied the dynamic filtration. It did its best, but it just couldn't pull it out. But that's what that is. There's an actual man, and that is the right side of the man's head standing there. That's basically transparent, just covering up that. So we move on from there. And we get back to the room. Remember this room? This is where we had the woman that was spread eagle relaxing on the bed. So um, he decides to do a little electronic device session in here. He has an electronic device that he decides to do. Well, as soon as he gets to this image right here, the Iroquois Technology actually gets a hit. And it's a pretty cool hit as well. So right here, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit. All right, so we zoom in, and we can definitely see something there. So what we did, we end up applying the Iroquois Technology, and we end up getting this. So you can faintly see there that there is the face of a Native American there. She's wearing a bandana, and you can see her braids. And it's funny because braids, every time we have seen braids, they always appear the same way regardless. And it must be something about braided hair or something, the way the particles are displayed. They always look the same, always the same texture, never different. So what we did here is we decided to take this image and decided to take a second image and actually colorize it so you can see. It's not that easy to see, but the reason we want you to know who's in this room, because when you go back and watch the actual video, when he's in this room, somebody or something shuts the door and slams it on him, and since she's at the door, we believe it's her. Native American being in his house, we just talked about continents and how each room could be like a different continent in a house like this where it has a lot of activity. What brought all the activity there most likely was that demonic room down there. It was probably the start of everything. And when that stuff starts like that, it's like ringing a dinner bell for these things. Everything else is going to show up. Doesn't matter if they're agreeing with what's going on there in the room. But these people are in there because they either decided not to be part of nature or they were rejected by nature. So he's in there, and you'll have to go and look at the video and see what happens to him. But I'll just show you this one video from the room, and that right there should be enough to make you want to go watch it. That is like that guy looked like he's getting ready, had just finished pole vaulting or doing a long jump or something. So that alone should be worth going to watch. And definitely go watch it. We want you to go watch this one. It's the investigation is not that great, but what we capture to me makes it great. The investigation is kind of ho hum, but what we captured made it great. But I enjoyed it though myself. I did enjoy it myself. But I don't want you to think it's some incredible investigation where you're on the edge of your seat. It's not that. It's not that type of investigation, but they do a good job. And so, lastly, they go and they're back messing around with this elevator here, and they see it or hear it going up, like someone is operating it without them, or operating it on its own. And so when they come around to start walking towards it, the Iroquois Technology gets a hit right at the moment where they hear the elevator start to function, like someone pushed it. Well, if you look right here, someone did. There's a woman standing right there, and you can see her. You can see her. And once again, no reason for the dynamic filtration. Because, listen, we rather you see them in their natural state. When we add the dynamic filtration, you're seeing them in their natural form, and the dynamic filtration builds upon that. So any chance that we get where we do not have to use the dynamic filtration, we want to do that. We want you to see it in the most rare form as you possibly can. The Iroquois Technology is going to hit on these things, and if you can see them like that, we are not going to use the dynamic filtration on it. That is good enough. Now, if we were working for this family and the family wanted to figure out who that girl was over there, then we would use it. And it would make sense to use it for that situation. And then we could pull it out. And plus, we could even make it look almost cartoonish. Sometimes I talk about not loading things because they end up looking too cartoonish. But when we work for a family, it doesn't matter that it looks cartoonish as long as we can get a clear enough image so they can determine if they happen to know the individual or not. And so it wouldn't matter in that situation. But and yeah, so tell us what you how you feel about that. Some people may like it natural. Some people may want to see the entities. Our stand is we rather show you in its natural form because that's the way nature is presenting it at that moment, and I think it's close to keeping them the way nature has presented them at that moment is best in CPI's opinion, and we should only use the dynamic filtration is when we really just can't see it, and we really want to know if it's a man or a woman or what we're dealing with. And so they're excited. Of course, they don't see this, right? They're just excited about someone's over there seeming like they're operating the elevator. So, anyways, they run over there and they take a listen, and they're like, "Yeah, it's going up." And he asks if ghosts, or he asks Sonny, can ghosts ride elevators? And it's cool. And I don't know what Sonny says. You just got to go watch it. So he hears it going up to the next floor. So he tears around and starts heading up to the next floor and gets pulled from behind back down their steps. That's what he says, right? We go and we run the Iroquois Technology, and we do get a hit, right? Now, he's moved a little bit, but he hasn't moved that much. And what you're seeing is that seems like it has moved a lot. What happens is sometimes these entities, when they stand in front of something when they don't want to be seen, one thing that we know that they have the ability to do that we've only seen actually out in nature. This would be the first time that we've ever seen it inside a house. Once again, another week's here, and we're saying we've never seen that before. Well, we actually have seen this before, but we've only seen it out in nature. They have the ability to do something called gravitational lensing. And gravitational lensing basically is used to determine how black holes are discovered, right? So what happens, you can't really see a black hole, and a black hole is not really like cutting a hole in the floor and you walk in and you fall in. Black holes are not like that. Think of a black hole more like a bowling ball, right? And let's say that bowling ball, even though it's round, let's say that roundness was empty space, and that roundness of a bowling ball, anything that was black on that bowling ball would be empty space. So it wouldn't matter from what angle of the bowling ball you went to poke at that bowling ball, your finger would go right into a black hole. Okay, does that make sense? So what you're looking at when you're looking at a black hole is like a bowling ball in space. And if you could throw a coin, that no matter from what side that you threw a coin, it would go directly into that space of that black hole. Okay, but to detect them, it's very difficult. So what they do is the gravitational pull is so incredible by a black hole that light photon particles can't even escape it, right? So meaning that if it goes past the a certain point of a black hole, light will bend into the black hole. So people discover it by seeing the light that looks like it's being wrapped around. So what happens when a black hole goes past a distant star, let's say, or a distant galaxy, that light appears to be wrapping around because of the gravitational pull on photon particles. So in this case, some entities have the ability to do the same thing. So they could stand, and I'll tell you the first time we noticed it was, we had an entity that was standing next to a tree, and his head made the tree look like there was a bite out of the tree. But what's interesting, when we used the dynamic filtration on it, the face of the head of the entity, we pulled that out. And we could see that his head was in front of the tree. There wasn't a bite out of that tree, but we could see actually the tree line directly behind what we thought was a bite out of that tree. But the tree, once the entity moved, you could see the tree was still whole. There was no bite out of it. It was just the entity that was standing on the right side of the tree, and his shoulder was basically up against the tree, and his head was kind of leaned to the right over top of his shoulder. So it appeared from his head to the part of his shoulder down to his elbow. That made it appear that a bite was out of the tree because they were using what we call gravitational lensing, wrapping the image from behind him in front of him. So what he was trying to do was trying to make himself transparent. But technically they're very dense. They're not transparent at all. They have the ability to wrap whatever image is behind them around them, the same as we see when clusters of a galaxy or light is behind a black hole. We see all the self-similarity that goes on between what we see in the atomic world. We are seeing it in the subatomic world. And now we're seeing it in this world that CPI discovered that we call the mid-atomic world. That's in between. We think everything in the subatomic world can now be connected to the atomic world based on what we're discovering in this type of research. So CJ is so excited to go up to catch this entity getting out of this elevator. It's so far, I don't know why he would think that. But anyway, so he's going up the steps and he is actually pulled backwards by something. And you can see right here, he is freaked out. I mean, has his hand over his heart. And anyone who has been terrified before will instinctively do that because your heart is beating so hard. You're actually scared that it's going to jump out of your chest. And so you actually will put your hand over to try to slow the rhythm of your heart down by actually externally pressing upon it. And I've done it myself before, and maybe anyone else who has been scared knows that feeling. And your heart will beat so powerfully that you will actually put your hand to try to slow it down. I don't know if it works or not, but that's what he does here. And he's telling Sonny that, and Sonny's like, okay. And because he's probably thinking, I didn't see anything. So once again, we go back, we run the Iroquois Technology on it, because remember, we're moving frames now. And sure enough, we get a hit right here. And let's just start with this banister post right here. You see what looks like a thumb and fingers wrapped around that. So that looks like an entity getting ready to come out of there. And then if you look to the left here, there is a face. He has like tiny teeth. He has like red lips. And if you get a really good look at it, and we can try to colorize it a little bit for you, and maybe it can bring it out. And this is not actually how it looks, but maybe we can add just a little bit of color and see what happens. Okay, so basically to us, as we colorize it, that's what we think we're looking at. We're not going to keep the color up there. We're going to take it away so you can look at the natural thing. But so anyways, that's what we think it looks like. And what's interesting, it could, to some people, look like the devil, right? And you're like, oh boy, they do. That's the devil. They must have the devil in there. Slow down. Okay. Let me show you a couple images that we found on Google, right? Clearly, any of these individuals could be mistaken for the devil if the Iroquois technology and the dynamic filtration did any work on a house that they were in. I mean, humans, men and women, have decided while they're still living to appear like Satan for some reason. I don't know. So, if people describe seeing the devil, I say it's BS. We've been doing this for a long time, and we have captured a lot of images. We have ran the Iroquois technology on houses that people say are haunted by the devil or a demon or whatever you want to call it. Let me just tell you right here, right now, every one of those houses that people swore, even the ones in California that makes a big stink on TV that everyone's probably seen about how people have been talking to the devil and these demonic whatever in the houses. We're here to tell you they are liars. Not the people, but the entities. Those entities are nothing more than human entities. Every entity that we've ever captured is nothing more than a human lying to the living about who he or she is. When we have captured a woman in a room and the devil is speaking to her, or a demon was speaking to her, when the Iroquois technology hit on that person, it looked nothing more than the nerdy guy named Sheldon that worked in the mailroom, that tried to date all the women, that was kind of creepy, that nobody wanted to date. You see my point here? If people lie in our third dimension and they tell you that they're a bunch of stuff that they're not, right? Why don't people even consider that the entities that they're dealing with might be lying to them? Why in the world would any negative entities in any house tell you their name, regardless of whatever it was? If these electronic squawk boxes that they use work, that we don't believe that they do, because when we have seen ghost hunters and people use them in a room where there's nothing but men, those boxes have women's voices coming out of them, but yet there's no women in there. At least not powerful enough, meaning that they haven't moved from the electron stage into the muon stage, into the tau stage, where communication would be possible. Right? You have to be able to see them at some point for that voice to come out at one of those three stages, right? And we're just not seeing that. So we say officially, we have never caught anything in any house that's been reported as demonic, and that would be every demon show that we've ever gotten off TV. We have ran the Iroquois technology. If you have a house and you know a video that's out there that they swear that demons are running around there, drop us a line, tell us where it's at. We'll run the Iroquois technology on it. And I can tell you right now what we're going to find. We're going to find humans in there lying to the living about who they are. I got a girlfriend that lives in Canada. That is a lie. I do not have a girlfriend that lives in Canada. So, when these demons are dead, that are nothing more than people, and they tell you, my girlfriend lives in Canada, they're lying to you as well. All right? So, we have never seen a demon. Man is demon, right? I'm not saying any of these people are demons that I'm showing you right here, But when you transfer over and you're in a negative place, and just like a jail, maybe you want to be the toughest guy on the block or the toughest girl on the block, maybe you'll lie to about who you are. Now, you really can't lie to them because all those entities are all massed together. They're a conglomerate, so they already know all the truth about each other. So they can't lie to each other. So the only people that's left for them to lie to manipulate, is the living. So we already know, if you've been following us, how they appear to have horns and they can appear to have hooves and all that, and they're in dark shadow. That is what we call veiling glare. That is not real. That is nothing more than a hand puppet or a shadow puppet that they can design. Instead of making a shadow puppet on a wall, they can make that same shadow puppet appear over top of them. So, for example, if you could take a wall and you had a light source behind you and you could make a perfect bunny rabbit on that wall, right? It would be literally like taking your young child, putting them against the wall and something that's black or gray, and making that shadow puppet over top of that child. Now, is that child a dark, scary entity? No. It's your child. You made him wear something gray and you're doing a shadow puppet over top of him. These entities are able to do that. So some of them are able to create what looks like horns. So when someone says, hey, I was in bed, I looked up and the devil was over top of me because there was these horns there. It's a lie. The Iroquois Technology can look through that veiling glare and see Sheldon behind there, still wearing high waters. It's a lie. All of this stuff is just deception. They're just people who once lived, who are still miserable, living inside of these structures that are lying and been lying to the living from day one. Unless the devil himself shows up, and maybe he will look different, everybody we've seen has been nothing more than human in every, and I say every, demonic place we have ever looked into. They're just humans. They're just liars. And they are the devil because they're the same Jeffrey Dahmers and all those people who didn't care about human life when they were living in our third dimension. Now they're in the fourth dimension and they're still deceiving people. They can't deceive each other because they all know each other's truths. So the only people they can deceive are the living. And if we continue to be gullible about that and fearful about that, well, wow, it's a demon. It's very powerful. It picked me up. Okay. Listen, it's a lot easier to get a bunch of people who hate together than it is to get a bunch of people who love together. If I tried to get, honestly, 10 people right now to go to a movie at 5 o'clock p.m., I am not going to find 10 people. Do I know 10 people? Absolutely. Half of them be like, nah, man. Or what movie I want to see? Nah, I don't want to see that. And you'll go down the line and you'll find some lonely person that goes, man, I've been waiting for you to ask me for weeks. And we would go, it'll be one person, and they were like, who else is coming? I'd be like, this is it. It's us. But however, get a topic up where someone wants to hate somebody for doing something, right? Hey, we're all meeting downtown. We're all going to throw eggs at such and such. Man, you can get hundreds of thousands of people to show up for that. So my point is, in a negative environment, inside these homes, you can get entities to seem very powerful because you have so much hate in there and people willing to join in on that hatred. Where nature, they would rush you out of there because they needed to rush you out of there because you don't belong there. But in most cases, they're not going to hurt you to do that. Unless you're in some rare place and it's something very, very, very unique, very special to them, or some place that might be segregated for negative entities. That, we don't know. We just have never found any of that type of stuff out in nature. It's amazing. So anyway, I'm going to go. Once again, we ran a little long, trying to keep it within an hour, but we have so much to share with you. Thank you for tuning in. Thanks for CJ and Sunny. Great video. I'm sending everybody your way, guys. I hope they check it out. I enjoyed it. I hope they enjoy it as well. Remember to like and subscribe, guys. Thanks again. We're just reaching that 400 point mark for our subscribers, and we're just going to keep going. Like I said, we have a nice, steady, slow pace, and that's fine. You guys are sticking around, and we love it. We love it. And so, tune in next Friday, just like every Friday, and for Paranormal Diagnostic. Ciao.